Okay, popping on today to start a discussion about healthy boundary setting, which was coming up last week. I was recognizing the relevance and jumping off of the topic that we were discussing last week. And it's also, I feel, something really important for us to discuss no matter what is going on, because it's another one of those things that's not modeled to us very well. And we could stand to use some help figuring out how to set those healthy boundaries. I know that when we don't know how to do it, sometimes the boundary gets set in a way that we don't really like how we set it, and then we feel badly. We often don't know how to say no. This is all that this discussion is about today. I've got a bunch of notes that I took, so I'm going to be reading off of those. Pipe up when you all have examples from your own life, and I will be sharing one of mine as well. I was talking earlier this week in that first video about why setting these healthy boundaries is important. It keeps us in a safe container. When we're in a rocky situation, or if we're with someone that we don't trust as much to emotionally let our guard down. And I also mentioned in that video that it can make us more loving, even though I know that seems counterintuitive. For those of us who struggle with the healthy boundary setting, it seems like we're shutting off the love and the connection when we're setting that boundary, but it can make us more loving because when we feel safe, it's easier to give, to trust, to be able to extend ourselves. And when we do the exercise at the end that I have planned, you'll be able to visualize incoming negativity almost like it's bouncing off of you while you keep that calm, loving interior. So again, pipe up when you have comments about how these healthy boundaries have shown up for you this week. Maybe not so healthy. Maybe you noticed where, oh, that was an instance where I should have stood my ground there. And there's got to be a better way to do it than what I did. I would love to hear your feedback. I mentioned in that earlier video the concept of differentiating. We want to get an idea that these are my emotions and those are your emotions. Your emotions are just as valid as theirs. This also means being aware of our own needs separate from the other, filling our own tank. Why talk separation when we've talked so much about inclusion? I think we all have different and necessary roles to play. Boundary setting involves knowing your own role, knowing your own needs, knowing your own desires, your own limits, and not getting lost in someone else's role. Let's talk about what setting healthy boundaries actually looks like. Again, this is about knowing your own limits, which is a tough thing to learn, especially if you haven't looked at this with awareness. A lot of us don't know when we've passed our limits until we hit that resentment part. The key would be to start to become versed in your emotions, because using those is your indicator of where you're at, what you need, what's being triggered, how you need to set that boundary. Knowing your emotions and being versed in them is a great way to prevent that resentment that comes up after the fact when the boundary has already been crossed. So awareness, what am I feeling? Identifying that emotion and thinking, what does it mean? What do I need to do in this situation? This kind of practice does get faster the more that we develop that awareness and start to practice and listen to those emotions as tools. Setting healthy boundaries is also a lot about self-care, recognizing and honoring that your feelings have importance is a part of that self-care, and filling up your own fuel tank. The more that we have to give when our tanks are full, the more loving we're able to be. That is all about that play and that balance with boundary setting. I think having an accountability person is great, whether it's a coach or a friend that says, hey, I'm kind of crap at setting healthy boundaries too. Checking in with them, practicing, increasing your awareness is a wonderful way to just get it top of mind. A lot of these conversations are just about getting a concept top of mind, having a brainstorm about it, and sending us off into the week, the remainder of the week, the next week, with a keen, watchful eye. That's the best way to start developing a new skill anyway. I also mentioned in that first video that we could chat about how to say no without becoming the villain. I think this is the hardest part about setting boundaries, is we end up feeling badly. We feel like we're not a good enough friend, a not a good enough partner, a not a good enough wife, husband, parent, whatever that is when we set that boundary. I don't know if you all have ever felt bad for saying no and then set the boundary anyway and notice that it just feeling badly for saying no distorts how you're coming across when you set the boundary. And then, yeah, the wheels come off and it can kind of be a little bit disastrous. The important part there is a practice of knowing to give yourself permission to set the boundary. Can reduce the likelihood of setting the boundary in an unhealthy way by not making yourself feel badly for setting the boundary in the first place. Again, this is a practice. Giving yourself permission and knowing that you deserve to take care of yourself, to fill your own tank. And this healthy boundary setting is an indication of a healthy level of self-respect. Also important. I would love to share how I screwed this up yesterday. So, yeah, gotta love the hindsight is 2020 thing. This is really a work in progress. I got into some resentment and some frustration and even some anger yesterday when I noticed after the fact that I should have set a healthy boundary earlier in the day. So I had a lot to do yesterday, had a big to-do list. I was checking things off and getting through it, and a situation arose in which I could take care of another human being that's super important to me. Had a conversation about it early in the morning. I'm looking at my to-do list. I don't know if I have time to meet this need of this other person, but wow, they really needed some help. And I'm a giver, I'm a caretaker, so I wanted to rush to fill that gap. And it was really tough to say, this is hard for me because I want to help you. And I'm not sure if I have time, but let me keep that in mind. I would really like to help you, but let me move through my list first. Well, I rattled through the list, and then a window of opportunity opened a little bit later to where I thought, oh, I'm just gonna jump through this window. I'm gonna take advantage of this opportunity. I'm gonna give to this person because it makes me feel so good to be able to help someone out when they're in need. Come be that go-to person in a crisis, and it's a very loving thing. It was a great opportunity for me to give my heart and help someone else. But I focused more on the giving than making sure I really had enough time to get what I needed done. It ended up steamrolling to where I ended up doing this string of giving to a couple other people to where all of a sudden when it got to be my time to do my own stuff, I was running late and I got pissed at myself, mind you, not at anybody else. Like, luckily, I hope didn't take it out on anyone else, but I didn't notice that I passed that boundary of saying, no, this is I need to take care of myself today. I get that you need some help and that you're having a version of a crisis, which is legitimate, but I need to take care of myself today so that I can prevent getting into that anger and resentment place. Yeah, so I realized that after the fact, and then got super cranky and pissed at myself, realizing that I had stretched myself too thin, and then I was late, and that being late meant that I didn't have my ducks in a row for something that was important to me, and it just steamrolled and all chalked up to fill your own tank first. It's okay and difficult, but okay to say no. It doesn't make us bad people. As caretakers, we love to give, and giving to other people can be wrapped up in our sense of self-worth. So we have to be careful of that. We have to watch that, or we can get depleted. So we got to give to ourselves to fill up the tank. I'd love to play with an exercise on how to do that. It's kind of a fun little tool that you can create in your imagination when you're anywhere. So we might play with it kind of a longer, it's not going to be as long as like last week, but a longer version of this tool. And when you get good at this, you can call it up in a second, in a heartbeat, when you know that you need this sense of safety, protection, and knowing where you begin and end and where they begin and end, keeping that separation. So it's visualizing a bubble that we get to create and be super creative with, and that's the fun part. Having that bubble is key for how to not lash out in a way and set that boundary in a way that's inappropriate. So we're increasing our awareness for those emotional signals, and channeling the anger actually is the key boundary setter. Channeling the anger appropriately, recognizing it, and setting that boundary. For those of you who are Carla McLaren junkies, the two key emotions that can help create this healthy bubble are a little bit of sadness, healthy sadness, and healthy anger. For those of you who want to play along, create this bubble. We're going to get our best imagination running rampant here. This will work anywhere you are, really. You don't have to close your eyes, but you can. The healthy side of sadness is what helps us let go. It helps us sink. It helps us soften, deepen. The soft side of sadness is a relaxation emotion. So if you can think first of anchoring yourself, deepening yourself, softening. Sadness is a lot like taking just a soft sigh and just sinking into where you're at, feeling that groundedness, anchoring in. This is giving you that sense of stability that you need to create the healthy bubble. So you can soften your body. Take a breath. You can ultimately do this in a quick second, but I'm just explaining through it so you get the idea of dropping into that healthy side of sadness. So taking a breath, shaking it out, feeling as if you had an anchor that just dropped you safely into the earth so that it's stabilizing you and supporting you. Letting go, dropping in. Okay. And now the healthy side of anger that sets a boundary. Anger is what lets us know that something isn't right, doesn't serve us, a boundary has been crossed. This is the one that we get really creative with. This anger is going to infuse our bubble. So this one you may want to close your eyes on. If you can imagine, I think of Glinda from The Wizard of Oz when I think of bubble, but it can be any color, but it's going to be about arm's length around you, above you, even below your feet. Visualize that protective bubble, and your breath, when you take an in-breath and you think of that protection, the out-breath is what's going to infuse and blow out the bubble. So blow out and imagine that bubble around you. You can infuse it with any color that you want it to, What color feels right to you now to infuse this bubble with? Some people do bright colors because it signifies that boundary. In breath, and then infuse that bubble. Know that anything that happens in this bubble is safe. It keeps you safe. It keeps you separate from what's going on outside. You can allow in whatever you want. Anything that's positive can penetrate the bubble, but anything that's negative bounces right off because you're infusing it with that healthy anger boundary, the healthy side of anger. And that's it. A little bit of dropping down and anchoring into that sadness, using the breath to anchor and to relax and let go. And then that out breath, infusing the bubble with a radiant color, maybe glitter, maybe it's fiery on the border of it. Anything that helps you and makes you feel like I'm safe in here. Easy, quick tool to be done in 2 breaths when you're going into a situation where you want to keep a healthy sense of protection, where there might be too much negativity around. It's great for those upcoming family gatherings where you never know when someone's going to say something inappropriate that triggers you. You can infuse that bubble each moment and keep re-infusing it. It'll stay pretty maintained, but anytime you take a deep breath, anchor, and the next deep breath, infuse that bubble with whatever it is that you want to keep that safety. That's all I wanted to cover today. Feel free to pop in comments after the fact, and I would love to take your suggestions for any future themes that we do on any upcoming weeks. Thinking about you all. Stay cozy and safe out there. Bye.